Aunt Emmanuel Haro. Some of you may know about what's going on. He was abducted last night in front of the Big Five. Now there are stories going around that some of you have fabricated, and I'm just on here just to tell you guys what transpired. So my sister-in-law and my brother, they were at my older nephew's football practice, and he needed a new mouth guard. So instead of taking everybody, my sister-in-law opted to go, and she only took the baby, which is Emmanuel. And when she got there, she realized the baby had went to the bathroom in his diaper. So as any mom would, which is crazy because a lot of you women are judging her for even changing a baby's diaper in the car, which is mind-boggling, because if there's no bathroom, you're gonna do what you have to do to take care of your child one way or another. She's a great mother, so everything you guys are saying about her, first of all, you don't know her, and show some compassion. Like, she just had her son taken from her. And also, back to what I was saying, so she realized that he had went to the bathroom on himself. Of course, he's a baby. And she laid him down in the back. Her back was turned. She was about to change him. She was getting everything prepared. And she felt like a tap on her shoulder. She turned around, and all she heard was "Hola." And before she could even see this person, acknowledge this person, whatever the case may be, he socked her in the face, and she ended up blacking out. He knocked her out, and she fell to the floor. And next thing you know, as she came to, she woke up. She was looking around for the baby. The baby was gone. She started panicking, screaming, crying. She called the police. She ran into Big Five to see if they had cameras outside or if anybody had witnessed anything. And nobody apparently didn't see anything. And then there's no cameras outside. We're so baffled, because how are there no cameras outside? Like, in cases like this, like, what are people supposed to do? Sorry. So after that, my brother told me that he had realized that his wife wasn't back, because by that time it was already 8 o'clock and she had left around 7, and he said that he ended up calling her, and she picked up the phone and she was hysterical, and he couldn't even understand her. So the police had took the phone from her and told my brother what had transpired. And he had his ex-wife there, because they had a son together, and his ex-wife and her boyfriend ended up driving my brother to Big Five. And ever since then, we've been looking for Emmanuel. We've been giving out flyers. People came out, prayed for us, prayed for Emmanuel. It's been a very hard time for our family. I haven't slept. My brother hasn't slept. We just want him back. And there is a lot of discussion on whether my nephew is special needs. He is late in development, but as far as we know, the doctors say that he's in great health. He's fine. He just has a lazy eye, and that made him more beautiful than anybody I knew, because I loved him so much. It didn't matter what he looked like. And I know he's going to come back to us, and with your continued prayers and your you uplifting us, I know he'll come back, and whoever took him here, I can't even say what you are on this app, but just give him back. He needs his family.
Keeping the truth alive in cases like baby Emmanuel is only possible if you stand with us. Subscribe now so his voice is never silenced. Thanks for watching my video. Please like and subscribe my channel and hit the bell icon. 7 seconds into a now viral clip, a woman the public had never met stepped into the spotlight and changed the shape of an entire investigation. She looked straight at the camera, voice raw, eyes pleading, and she vouched for her family. She told a story about a frantic moment at a parking lot, about a diaper, change, a sudden assault, and a child who vanished. For a time, her words generated sympathy and redirected conversation away from suspicion. Then, as new facts surfaced and pressure mounted, her post disappeared, and so did she. If you haven't been following every thread, that woman is Jake Haro's sister. If you care about how a single video can alter a criminal inquiry, subscribe now and drop your view in the comments below. Tell us whether you think she acted out of loyalty, fear, or something else entirely. We read every credible tip and follow the best leads. She did not enter this story from a courtroom or from behind a lawyer's podium. She entered the story with a phone and a short emotional video. She is family, plain and simple, not an official spokesperson. In the immediate aftermath of the initial report, she used a public feed to tell the version of events the family wanted told. She described where they had been, what Rebecca allegedly did that night, how the mother turned to change the baby and felt a tap on her shoulder, and how she blacked out before she could see who was there. She spoke of frantic searches, of running into the store to look for cameras that might have captured the moment, and of handing out flyers and praying through long sleepless nights. To many viewers, that clip read as a grieving relative begging for help. To many investigators and to a growing cohort of online observers, the clip read like a recorded statement, a public artifact to be preserved, analyzed, and tested. In today's investigations, social posts are not ephemeral thoughts. They are evidence. They are captured, archived, and compared against forensic reality. When the sister posted, she did two important things at once. She generated sympathy, and she created a record. Investigators treat such records seriously. The precise phrasing, the tense of verbs, what is said and what is omitted, all of it becomes material. Two particular features of her recording drew immediate attention. One was a linguistic quirk. She occasionally referred to baby Emmanuel in the past tense. People noticed the subtle difference between saying he is missing and saying he was taken. That past tense usage, slight as it may seem, is not meaningless in a missing child case. Forensic linguists flag those patterns because sometimes tense reveals belief about outcome. The other salient feature was timing. She posted early at a moment when public sympathy could be marshaled in favor of the family. And then after reporters and investigators began publishing inconsistencies, and after the father's criminal history became known, she removed her posts and vanished from social media. Deleting a public plea is itself a notable event. It invites questions and prompts investigators to open a line of inquiry into why the post was pulled. What investigators do next is methodical. They preserve the original file even if the user deletes it. They seek platform metadata, upload timestamps, IP addresses, device information, and any available edit history. They track whether third parties reshared the content, creating copies off platform. They serve preservation letters and, if necessary, subpoenas. They pull phone records and messaging threads to recode. instruct who communicated with whom and when. They compare the sister's narrative with external facts, store surveillance, timestamps from receipts, GPS pings, and witness statements. That comparison is straightforward forensic work, and it is precisely the work that turns a public plea into either a corroborating account or a vector of inconsistency. Why does this matter? Because words can corroborate or undermine a narrative. If camera footage or objective timestamps match the sister's account, the video is powerful corroboration and becomes part of a family's defense. If the footage contradicts the account, that very same video can be used to highlight contradictions and in some cases to help justify search warrants or further investigative steps. In this case, the sister's video initially shaped the narrative in the family's favor. The past tense phrasing and subsequent deletion then fed suspicion, accelerated investigative focus on the household, and became one of the items law enforcement used to justify deeper searches and scrutiny. There are two broad explanations investigators must consider when a relative publicly defends family members in a case that later looks suspicious. One explanation is simple loyalty and genuine belief. People protect kin instinctively. They testify to what they have been told, genuinely convinced they are telling the truth. Loyalty can be blind. It can also be well-intentioned. The other explanation is far darker. The relative knew or suspected the truth and nonetheless acted to promote a false narrative, perhaps to mislead the public or to delay investigative progress. Both possibilities are plausible. The only way to move from speculation to certainty is through the hard work of evidence, phone logs, message drafts, metadata, surveillance footage, and corroborating or contradictory physical findings. Digital forensics is the bridge that connects those hypotheses to facts. Del Sayas. Reading a social post does not erase it from the internet's memory. Platforms retain logs. Screenshots and reshared copies often survive. Forensic teams can recover cached versions, server-side records, and copies stored by third parties. When investigators obtain those records, they can reconstruct exactly when a post went live, from which device it was uploaded, and whether it was edited or taken down in response to a specific event. If the deletion happened immediately after the public exposure of the father's prior conviction or right after a reporter pointed out a mismatch in the timeline, that timing becomes elite. It suggests reaction and not merely ordinary digital housekeeping. Beyond the digital trail, investigators also look to human connections. Phone records are crucial because they reveal who was in contact with the sister before and after the post. Did she consult with family members? Did she coordinate a script with someone? Did she get legal advice telling her to delete the post? Phone and message logs show patterns. Witness interviews show motives and context. If a pattern of coordination emerges, investigators will probe deeper. If not, the evidence may point towards sincere, if misguided, defense. Another tool in the investigator's kit is forensic linguistics. Experts in this field analyze the sister's choice of words, patterns of tense and modality, repetition, and whether the language used appears spontaneous or rehearsed. A single past tense phrase does not convict anyone, but consistent patterns of phrasing and shifts across multiple recordings can indicate coaching or rehearsed messaging. If her wording remains identical across multiple takes, that suggests preparation. If her story changes in subtle ways, that could be the product of evolving memory under stress, or it could indicate deliberate revision. Those linguistic markers do not determine guilt. They guide lines of further inquiry. We must also consider the human consequences of the sister's public defense. Her initial video drew sympathy, and that sympathy had practical effects. It shifted public sentiment for a time and likely influenced the tone of early media coverage. Sympathy can sometimes delay suspicion and reduce the immediate pressure on investigators who must nonetheless follow leads. When the public mood shifted from sympathy to skepticism, volunteer sleuths and online communities intensified their scrutiny. That public scrutiny, while imperfect, produced leads and tips that investigators can pursue. The flip from defensiveness to suspicion also shaped the environment in which prosecutors and detectives made decisions about warrants, searches, and the scope of interviews. There is a related and painful detail about family responsibility that amplified the sense of unease. When investigators removed another child from the home and placed that child with Child Protective Services, public expectation was that family members might step forward to provide care. The sister, who had been the most visible vocal defender, did not step up to assume custody or care for that child. That absence is not by itself proof of anything. But in the calculus of human behavior, it is a data point, investigators note. Words of defense in public followed by a refusal or inability to take responsibility for a vulnerable child change how observers interpret motives. Investigators treat such actions as behavioral indicators to be examined, not as dispositive evidence. Turning to legal considerations, the sisters' recorded statements can enter court proceedings in several ways. Prosecutors may, quote, public posts or social media videos in probable cause affidavit if they believe the statements help explain inconsistencies or motive. Defense teams will push back aggressively, framing those posts as emotional outbursts or mistaken recollections. Judges will inevitably consider questions of admissibility. Are these statements hearsay? Are they spontaneous declarations, or do they fit under an exception that allows their admission? Those legal debates will be fought in motions and hearings because courts are mindful of pretrial publicity and the risk of tainting juries. The sisters' posts are not only evidentiary items, they are factors in a broader legal strategy around discovery, motions, and venue. One of the key things to watch for as the story unfolds is how the sisters' posts show up in the formal record. If investigators treat the deletions as meaningful and include the preserved posts in affidavit, that means the digital material informed their probable cause assessments. If instead the sisters' posts are absent from court filings, the legal argument may be that the posts had no material bearing on the probable cause. Observant viewers should look at the docket for filings that reference social media preservation, requests, subpoenas for platform records, and search warrant returns listing seized devices. Those documents will reveal whether investigators tied the sister statements to formal investigative steps. It is important to stress that public defense of a relative is not a crime. Expressing grief, pleading for help, and posting a heartfelt account are not in themselves criminal acts. Charges only become a possibility when statements cross into the realm of knowingly false information, or if a person intentionally obstructs an investigation. For example, knowingly providing fabricated details to law enforcement or coordinating a false narrative to mislead authorities could expose someone to criminal liability. That legal threshold is high, and prosecutors must prove intent and knowledge. That is why investigators collect phone logs, messages, and other corroborative evidence before recommending charges. If you ask what evidence would support either the deceived hypothesis or the complicit hypothesis, the answers are concrete. Evidence favoring deception would include private messages showing genuine confusion, witnesses reporting that the sister believed what she was told, and a lack of coordination in her communications. Evidence favoring complicity would include drafts of coordinated messaging, rapid deletions, time to new disclosures, messages indicating awareness of problematic facts, or direct communications showing orchestration. Investigators will look for both patterns. They will neither assume innocence nor assume guilt without those corroborating signals. A technical point worth highlighting is how digital preservation works. When investigators suspect social posts are material, they issue preservation letters to platforms within hours, asking the company to retain server-side copies. They follow up with subpoenas or warrants to obtain user logs, IP access records, and device identifiers once there is probable cause. Often, third parties have already reshared the content, leaving copies in caches, in screenshots, or in shares that can be recovered. Even if a user deletes a post, these server-side records and cached copies provide the pathway to reconstruction. That is why deletion is rarely a disappearing act in investigative terms. For viewers wondering how to help, the answer is straightforward. Provide verifiable information to police, not speculation to the internet. If you have a screenshot The metadata, an original file, or a first-hand account of seeing the sister post the video, contact the official investigators. Don't post raw allegations that could taint witnesses or prejudice investigations. Law enforcement prefers well-documented tips through official channels over public conjecture. The sister's disappearance also complicates the human side of this story. Public defenders, family attorneys, and crisis counselors may all advise a client to withdraw from public life to preserve legal options or protect mental health. That is a humane reason to delete posts and go quiet. On the other hand, going quiet can be interpreted as an attempt to avoid backlash or legal scrutiny. That ambiguity is why investigators pursue digital forensics to convert ambiguity into data. There are social consequences as well. A person who once generated empathy can, through a single deletion or absence, generate suspicion and anger from the public. That social reaction can have real consequences. It can discourage other relatives from coming forward. It can depress the flow of community tips, and it can alter charitable support for the family. Investigators must be aware of how public outrage or sympathy can change the environment in which evidence is generated and witnesses come forward. Another practical element to observe is how prosecutors and defense counsel will litigate the meaning of a deleted post. Defense counsel may argue that any deletion was counsel-driven and taken to avoid self-incrimination, while prosecutors may argue that deletion reflects consciousness of guilt. Judges will consider the surrounding facts, including whether deletion happened immediately after a disclosure or if it followed legal advice. The interplay between counsel and social media is a new and evolving area of pretrial litigation. Progress in this investigation will likely show up in specific court documents. Look for motions that mention social media, preservation, motions for discovery that include digital evidence and affidavit that reference posts as part of probable cause narratives. Those filings often contain redacted or summarized quotes from the content in question and will be the clearest, most reliable place to see how investigative authorities use the sisters' statements. As we follow the docket, remember the human element. There is a grieving family, a missing child, and people who have been deeply affected by what happened. A sister's public plea was for many an emotional response. For investigators, it was also an item of evidence. Those two realities can coexist. Being compassionate does not mean ignoring facts and following. Evidence does not mean abandoning empathy. The goal of a rigorous investigation is to reconcile both, to find truth in a way that protects victims and ensures procedural fairness. To close this deep dive, keep in mind the most actionable things we can watch for. Look for court filings that reference preserved social posts, subpoenas for platform records, and search warrant returns listing devices or cloud accounts seized. Watch for motions to suppress or motions in lemonade that argue over the admissibility of social media statements. Pay attention to whether the sisters' posts are quoted or referenced in affidavit that justify investigative steps. Those concrete documents will tell us how much weight investigators assign to her words. If you have verifiable information regarding the sisters' posts or deletions, give it to law enforcement, not social media rumor mills. Verified evidence, screenshots with metadata, the original video file, or a witness who can attest to the posting event is the path to substantive progress. We will continue to monitor the docket and explain the filings in plain language. When preserved posts or forensic reports surface, we will walk through what they mean and how they fit into the broader investigative picture. Thank you for staying with this focused review. The sisters' short recorded plea, its timing, and the subsequent deletion are a powerful example of how digital words can become evidence. We will keep translating those documents into plain language for you, and we will follow every credible lead. If you want a technical breakdown next on how forensic teams recover deleted posts, trace IP addresses, or map text message chains, tell us in the comments which piece you want explained first. We'll do a step-by-step on that next. Stay critical, stay compassionate, and subscribe so you don't miss the moment new filings or forensic detail.